Well, hey everyone, and welcome to Southridge. If this is your first time joining us in this format, I'd love to offer a few tips on how to make the absolute most of this experience. Be sure to crank up the volume during the music and sing along. Don't worry, we can't hear you. If you're a musician, download the music charts below the video, grab your instrument and play along. For any kids who are participating with us, don't worry if you don't know the words or can't read them. Just sing, dance, or make up music of your own. We're just so happy that you're joining with us today. If English isn't your first language, or if you experience hearing challenges, I'd love to encourage you to turn on the closed captioning on this video or download the transcripts for this morning's message. And be sure to download the Southridge app. This is the best way to stay connected and informed about everything that's happening here at Southridge. It's completely free and super easy to use. But for the next hour, I want to invite you to engage with this experience just as if you were with us, surrounded by a community of diverse, curious, open-minded, and inclusive people, all desiring to tap into the power and presence of God together as we worship, pray, listen, laugh, and grow. Now, there might be some things that we do or say that really resonate with you, and that's great. And there might be some things that stretch and challenge you, and we think that's good too. Ultimately, we want to encourage you to engage openly, thoughtfully, curiously, honestly, and wholeheartedly, trusting that the God that we're here to connect with is a God who is above all else love. So as we begin our time together, wherever and whenever you are, whether this is your first time with us, whether you've been around forever, we hope that for the next hour, you feel as if you're among friends. Welcome to Southridge. We're so glad you're here.
Well, good morning. My name is Sarah Jade, and this is Kaylee beside me. Recently, we had the opportunity to lead worship at a Brave Girls retreat, and I know Kaylee can attest to, just like I can, it was such an incredible worship experience. And so that's why I decided to bring some of our Brave Girls along with us this morning to help lead us in worship. When we were at the retreat, we really learned how to worship with our bodies. In Romans 12, verse 1, it says, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is true and proper worship." One of the things we talked about was the fact that as girls and women, we are often taught to be ashamed of our bodies, when in reality, God invites us to bring our minds, our bodies, and spirits fully to Him in worship. But this doesn't just apply to the females in the room. This applies to everybody. Sometimes it can feel easier to just feel detached and not be too vulnerable when we're worshiping, to make it a more internal thing. But it is so pleasing to God when we open our posture up in worship and allow God in without any physical barriers. An open posture communicates an open heart. So wherever you are this morning, I want to invite each and every one of you to worship with your whole bodies. That can look like clapping. That can look like arms raised or kneeling. I just don't want any hands at your sides or crossed arms. That's a no. These girls around me are really good worshipers, and they know how to bring their full selves. So I just want to invite you to let them lead you in this kind of worship, and invite God to open our minds and open our arms in worship. All right, girls, are you ready to show them how it's done?
Yeah!
All right.
You came and broke them down. You broke them down. There were chains around us. By came alive. Your love is greater, your love is stronger, your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater, your love is stronger, your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. And what a love we found, death can't hold us down. We shouted out, we're alive 'cause you're alive. And what a love we found, death can't hold us down. We shouted out, we're alive 'cause you're alive. And what a love we found, death can't hold us down. We shouted out, we're alive 'cause you're alive. Your love is greater, your love is stronger, your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater, your love is stronger, your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater, your love is stronger, your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater, your love is stronger, your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Sing, you give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Hey, so you give life. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Sing, all the earth. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath
This next song we're going to do is called Heavenly Mother, and Tom and I wrote it a couple years ago, and I brought it to one of the Brave Girl retreats, and it just connected so perfectly, and it's become a bit of an anthem for this Brave Girls program, just giving language to the maternal heart of God that sometimes we feel like is so lacking. So here we go. We are just so eternally grateful for this mothering heart that you offer. We thank you for this love, and will you help us to trust it and to know moving forward that you are with us, protecting us. We love you. In your holy name, amen.
We are a diverse community of imperfect people
who see the church as less of something to go to and more of a life to be lived and shared with others.
We are continually growing in what it means to love one another, fighting for unity rather than fighting over unnecessary arguments.
We are living to serve this world in the way of Jesus, serving those in need and those on the margins, knowing that friendship truly makes the difference.
So if you're coming with questions or curiosities,
hurts or frustrations,
joys
or celebrations.
Wondering if the church can bring clarity or hope.
Or simply be a place to belong.
We invite you to be at home with us.
We invite you to explore with us.
We invite you to grow with us.
And we invite you to belong with us.
Welcome to Southridge.
We're glad you're here.
Hey there, my name is Jessica Reimer, and I serve as the Director of Connection here at Southridge. We're so glad you're participating with us this week, and we hope that this has already been a meaningful experience for you. I'm standing here in our St. Catharines location, and if you've never joined us for one of our in-person gatherings at one of our physical Southridge locations, we invite you and would love to have you consider joining us in person when you feel ready and able. While we're so grateful to have this online platform to share in the experience from wherever and whenever we find ourselves, we love it even more when we can be together in person and embrace the magic of community. So please know that you're welcome to join us on any Sunday in person, and we will strive to quickly help you know that you belong. Especially if you've ever felt excluded or ignored by the church, we'd love the chance to change your experience and let you know that you are loved, accepted, and welcomed with us. In fact, if you happen to live in the St. Catharines area, I'd love to personally invite you to our location and would be thrilled to have the chance to meet you if you do decide to join us. And if you live near the Vineland or Welland location areas, I know you'll find the same welcome at those locations too. Now, for any of you who are brand new to all of this and may be participating with us in this online service for your very first time ever, we definitely want to say a special welcome to you. It's good to meet you, so to speak, even through the screen, and we're so glad that you've chosen to check us out. We hope you feel like you're among friends and family, even in this format. As our way of saying thanks for joining us for your first time, we'd love to give you a gift of our Southridge Jam from our social enterprise, the Southridge Jam Company. If you click on the New Here or Gift button below and share your contact info, we'll be in touch and safely deliver a jar of our Southridge Jam to you this week. Similarly, if you're looking for a way to get in touch with us, meet with a pastor, ask any questions, get baptized, or learn how to get more involved in our community, please take a moment to fill out the Connect card on our website or app, and we'll be in touch with you this week. For those of us who call this community home, one of the ways we can practice togetherness and express our gratitude to God and generosity to others is through our regular financial contributions. This is one of the ways we can invest our lives in what God is doing in and through our church community, making a difference by meeting needs among us, across our region, and around the world. All of our online giving options are available on our website, and so if you're able to give this week, we invite you to do so in a spirit of joy and generosity, and we thank you in advance for your faithfulness. Now, to help you stay aware of more opportunities to engage with our community or get involved, check this out.
Hey there, I'm Drew. I'm peer support at the shelter, but that's not where my story started. So about 2.5 years ago, I found myself homeless, and so ended up being welcomed into the shelter life. They really made it feel comfortable, even though I was not at my best. They showed me that I wasn't just another name or another number. I was somebody who mattered. And to know that we got a bed to sleep in and 3 square meals a day that are darn good meals, might I add. It really helps with the struggle. It allows you to concentrate on finding housing and working on yourself without having to worry about where your next meal is going to come from or where you're going to sleep for the night. Front desk volunteer at Southridge, you're going to be mainly answering phones, talking with residents, welcoming guests that come in the door. If ever you find yourself with questions, there's always somebody there to ask and somebody there to support you in your role. So as a kitchen volunteer, you're going to be asked to come in and prep the meal and cook the meal. You even get the opportunity to serve it if you'd like, which gives you the chance to go out and meet each one of the residents. And so that way you can show up at a community barbecue and you've already know everybody. It allows you to have more of a relationship and make a difference in somebody else's life.
Now we want to transition into this week's talk, and as we prepare to hear it together, we invite you to remove as many distractions as possible and listen in to what God might want to be saying uniquely to you. We're so glad you've joined us, and we look forward to growing together. this past April, I finished a 6-year teaching program at Brock. And like most graduating students, I was hit with this feeling like, what is next? What is going to be the next move for you? I knew that the next move for me was going to be to head up to Muskoka to be a counselor at a Christian camp for the summer. But it was awkward timing. I had to wait 6 weeks between graduating and going up to camp. Sadly, not Crossroads like most of my Southridge friends here, but a different Christian camp up in Muskoka. I'd be heading there for the summer. So this awkward 6-week buffer between graduating and going to camp. I was throwing around different ideas of what I could do to fill my time during this 6 weeks. And I wanted to stay in Niagara for the first time in my student life. I didn't want to return back to Oakville, where my family is from, for the first time. So I needed to find a valid reason to tell my friends and family as to why I should and could stay in Niagara. So in the spur of a moment decision, I decided to send Carrie Jones and Jade Bowie, 2 of our family ministry pastors, an email asking if they would like to have a part-time to full-time volunteer for this 6 weeks. The next day, I received this email. So safe to say, I had a reason to stay in Niagara. Carrie said, "I love it." In our initial meeting, on Zoom, of course, we talked through how volunteering would look and what this means. During this little meeting, Carrie also put forward the fact that they were looking for a family ministry administrator. They were looking to fill a role, and they asked if I would want to apply. They gave me the job description, and I was there writing notes and notes and notes, showing my interest, but also faking my interest. In my head, I knew politely I would decline. I even called my mom after this little meeting and said, "Mom, guess what? They want to offer me this job or to apply to this job." And then I ended my sentence with, "But I won't do that." So by the end of the week, I gave Carrie and Jade my no to applying for this job, but my yes to this volunteering experience. But after a few days of volunteering, I realized that my no may have been a little bit preemptive and probably a little bit more selfish. I began to recognize that God actually might be calling me to apply for this job. My initial no was based on the fact that I had just graduated Teachers College. There's a dire need for teachers in our world right now, coming out of the pandemic, and I knew that there was a good job probably waiting for me on the other end of the line. I also wanted to impress my family and friends, use my degree to its fullest potential, and have a good, valued, respected job. So over the first few weeks of volunteering, Carrie would kindly remind me that this job was still open and that I could still apply. She would say things like, "Oh, look at this desk over here. That could be yours." And each time I would chuckle and laugh and not really say anything in response, but in my head, I began recognizing that God may be calling me to this. As stars kept aligning in my life and conversations left me feeling God's calling on me, I began to pray about my yes. One morning, the morning of the Brave Girls retreat, I was asked to go on by Carrie. This was probably another moment where Carrie was like, how can I get Jenn to think more about this job? She asked me to come to Brave Girls. So that morning, I headed to Sunset Beach just for a little alone time before I went up there. And in my journal that day on the beach, I wrote this: I say yes. I say yes. If that's not direct enough call from God, I do not know what is. The week after Brave Girls, I finally said yes to God and yes to Carrie. I applied for the job, and eventually I got the job as the family ministry administrator. And as I reflect on my experience of saying no and then going to a yes, I realized that my initial no was built on selfishness, that I was seeing myself in a worldly ranking, and I needed to use those things way more than what God was calling me towards. I think that my no was also based on the fact that saying yes to this job was also really risky. It was a change to my plan. There was some fear involved. The plan that I had had for so long to become a full-time teacher was starting to crumble in my eyes, and I would at least put that on hold for now. But as I began to reflect on who I am in Jesus, I realized that I could trust God with my yes. As a follower of Jesus, my worth is not put in my job, the money that I make, or how much I use my degree, or even to the fact of what I was clinging to, how much I hold true to the plan that I had made for myself in 7th grade. In Isaiah chapter 6, this mirrors the experience in this moment. Isaiah in this moment is giving God his yes, and he says, "Here I am, send me." Many of you have probably heard this verse before, probably preached on, probably around the fact of changing paths or a call to action from the front. But Isaiah in this moment is actually in the temple by himself. He sees God and experiences his immensity in this moment for the first time. In chapter 6, verse 5, he says, "I was frightened and said, 'Oh no, I will be destroyed. I am not pure enough to speak to God and live among people who are not pure enough to speak to God. But I have seen the King, the Lord all-powerful.'" And in this moment, Isaiah identifies his humanity. He recognizes his unworthiness in God's eyes, and he shadows away from the glory of God. And I imagine Isaiah here shielding his eyes from the light and the fire that filled this room. If you read these verses, they talk about this light, this immense light that came through in this moment. And Isaiah's probably crouching down in the corner, shielding away from God. But the next part of the story is where Isaiah is awoken to his forgiveness in God. He encounters seraphim, which in one of the commentaries that I read, they describe seraphim as fiery angelic beings with remarkable power. So these bird-type angels come to Isaiah, and they touch his lips with a rock or a piece of coal that is burning. And in verse 7, the seraphim say to Isaiah, "Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for." Isaiah is wiped clean. And immediately after this moment happens, in verse 8, it says, "And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, 'Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?'" God is calling Isaiah to give him his yes in this moment. When I first hear this story of Isaiah, and I've heard it preached before, I always picture Isaiah in a crowd. I always picture God calling out to a room full of people who are equipped, strong, worthy, confident people, and I picture him actually just calling for someone to step forward. Someone to just be confident enough to step towards God and say yes with confidence. But when I look into these verses now, I see and realize that Isaiah was actually totally alone. God is calling Isaiah directly, independently, and personally. God was calling into an empty temple, and Isaiah was the only one there to hear it. How scary would that have been? Knowing that God was calling Isaiah, and he was probably fearing what the outcome could be, what the outcome was, and really living into the fact that he is unworthy of this call. How many of us feel unworthy of God's call in our life? I know that played a huge role in my initial no to carry. I was so overwhelmed and consumed with fear of what this role and what it meant to say yes to God and to God's call in my life. And I imagine Isaiah in this moment feeling the exact same way. I imagine him quickly trying to run out of the temple, running away from the presence of God and trying to retreat back to his verse 5 self, where he explained his unworthiness. In the Message translation, after God calls Isaiah in verse 8, it continues and it says, "I spoke up." Isaiah says, "I spoke up." As he's running away from God, probably going as fast as he can, running a marathon, he stops. He's giving God his no. And he stands there for a second, reflects on his own redemption story that just happened, standing in the awe of the Almighty God that he's just experienced. And he says, "I'll go. Send me." The ESV commentary actually says that God's grace leads Isaiah from "woe is me" to "here I am." And as I reflect on my own journey, I see that my yes is kind of following a similar trajectory. My original no was based in the fact that I was consumed by my own fear and my worldly status.
So I gave God my no. After careful reflection on that beach that one day before Brave Girls, I recognized that the God that I serve is a God of trust. I was able to give him my yes once I allowed myself to trust him. This doesn't mean that my yes was easy. I'm still consumed by fear. As I start this job in September, I'm scared what this role will mean, how I'm going to balance and pursue God at the same time, what this means for my future. And I'm sure Isaiah felt the same way. Because if we keep reading in verse 6, we realize what God was calling Isaiah to. He was calling Isaiah to go and tell the Israelites that they were basically all going to die and that they were never going to live in right relationship with God. I can say with confidence that Isaiah was scared of that. I know I would be. But as I get to my point, I want you guys to think about when our lives are transformed by God and when we trust God, we can give him our yes. One more time. When our lives are transformed by God and when we trust God, we can give him our yes. So the question is, where is God calling your yes? When was the last time you gave space to allow God to listen to what God is calling you towards? When thinking about your yes to God, it's important to think of this Isaiah transformation that happened. He wouldn't have been able to give God his yes before this transformation. He wouldn't have been able to say yes to this experience, to going through and giving God's word before he encountered God's presence. What does that mean for you? Maybe that means that you need to spend some time in the Bible learning about the heart of Jesus. Maybe it means that you need to talk to some mentors in your life about what it truly means to trust God. Maybe it means that you need to talk to God about this. Maybe you need to spend some time in prayer and talk to God about what it means to fully, lovingly trust in him. Before giving your yes, begin to establish trust. I like to use this analogy when I'm talking about trust with the idea of a sleepover. How many of you love sleepovers? I know that I do. If you're a kid going to a sleepover or a parent bringing a kid to a sleepover, I'm sure you don't just go and drop off your kid at a sleepover and say, see you later. But you maybe you meet this family in the park and you have a nice, lovely interaction at the park. And if trust is built there, then you move up to a play date. You might drop your child off at their house for a day play date. Once trust is built there, and that happens a couple times, you then graduate to the sleepover. How can we trust God in the park visit, in the day play date, and then in the sleepover? How can that happen in our lives? Then once you trust God, and when you have building trust in God, you have to give space to listen. So I headed to a place at Sunset Beach where there was quiet, and I went there at like 8 a.m. There was nobody there, and I was able to sit and be still and listen to God. Maybe this place for you is your backyard, a favorite chair, maybe it's on a walk, just somewhere quiet. And you can allow God to pursue you through your thoughts and prayers. For me, what ultimately made me recognize that I needed to apply for this job was I was finding joy in the things that it was going to present to me. I would go home from volunteering each day and be so excited to be back the next day, to be part of a team and to be part of a church community and be part of a job that brought me so much joy. For you, what is bringing you joy? What themes, ideas, or experiences or feelings are appearing in your life often that show God's abundance in your life? Is God trying to call you to a yes in that moment? What pulls at your heartstrings? What actually gets you fired up? What gets you a tiny bit, maybe even angry? Can you trust God in that? It might be a new job. It might be using your gifts to volunteer at Southridge or beyond. It might be a relationship, a friendship, a trip, or a move. Where do your wandering thoughts lead you? Is God pulling your wandering thoughts to this place, asking for you to trust him and say yes? Now, I think it's important to recognize that saying yes to everything is not what I or God is calling you towards. Workaholism is not a godly characteristic. Our God actually rested on the seventh day, and he calls us to practice the Sabbath. But coming out of the pandemic, I think that a lot of us are struggling with our yes. Because previously, we may have been living on the borderline of workaholism, burnout, and an overpacked schedule. The pandemic was a restart. We were actually given no's when we wanted to say yes. Our commitments and schedules became empty and possibly even filled with fear and a never-ending cycle of working from home. But now that we're emerging from the pandemic, we're holding so tightly to these yeses, trying to avoid this pre-COVID busyness. So as I begin to wrap up, I want you to recognize that Isaiah was called to one thing. He was to be called for God to use him to give the word of God to Israel, to the people of Israel. Isaiah didn't say yes to being God's bookkeeper, his counselor, the coach of the soccer team, or the volunteer coordinator. He was just called to deliver God's word. And in my case, I wasn't called to be the new teaching pastor of Southridge, although I am sitting here in front of a camera doing this sermon. But I am simply asked to be part of God's story, being part of the family ministry administrator role. Although I don't know what this means in the next 6 months, a year, 5 years, or 10 years, I know that my resounding yes to God in this moment on the beach will have kingdom impact for a long time. For you, where does God call you to say yes today in the small things? Where do you need God to reveal the story that he has for you? As I leave you with all these questions, I want to pray for you. That you would recognize the power of Isaiah's transformation. And as he is running towards the glowing exit sign at the back of the temple, he's running away from God's goodness and grace. But then he stopped. He spoke up and he said, "I'll go, send me." What could our lives, the future, and the church look like if we all gave this kind of yes to God? So let me pray for you. God, thank you for this story of Isaiah. Thank you for the life transformation that you gave him and that you showed us that you are calling us directly. Lord, I pray that you open the hearts of those who are listening and that those who are here, that they would hear your voice and that they would hear their call. God, I pray that we can give you our yes, that we can trust you with our yes. God, I pray that we give you space for that in the next few days. In your name, amen.
Here we are, standing on the edge of something new. Lead us on further than we've ever been before. Oh, with hands held high, be glorified. My heart's now crying. We are living for the glory of the Lord. Hearts are open wide. We're ready for you. And there's nothing we want more. You're all that we adore. Jesus, here we are. We're ready for you. Sing where you are, where you are. Freedom reigns for Christ to set us free. So now we decide to leave our fears behind for liberty. Yeah, with hands held high, be glorified. Our hearts now cry. We are living for the glory of the Lord. Hearts are open
Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We hope that you felt inspired and challenged by our time together. Now, we know that for what we've heard today to really become reality in our daily lives, it's going to take more than this 1 hour a week we spend together. It requires a moment-by-moment, 7 days a week commitment to practicing the way of peace and the way of Jesus. And that's why we provide a host of ways to continue to lean into God's presence while we're apart from each other. As always, you can click on the Practice This Week button below the player for daily spiritual exercises to continue to develop the muscles that we've started building together today. And if it helps, you can also opt into the spiritual practice notifications on our app to get those helpful reminders every morning as you start your day. As our time together ends, we're going to put some questions on the screen. Now, if you're watching with others, they can serve as great conversation starters, but they can also be a great way of processing and personalizing what we've heard today on our own. And if you'd like a more personal conversation with someone about anything at all that's going on in your life, we want to invite you to reach out to our location pastors who will simply follow up with you privately. You can fill out our Connect card and you can find it on our website or our app. So that's all for now. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care and have a great week.
Thank you.